What happens when two of music's biggest voices collide in a way nobody saw coming? The Kelly Clarkson Show has seen its fair share of emotional moments, heartfelt conversations, and celebrity surprises. But nothing could have prepared the audience for what unfolded when Toni Braxton sat down for what was supposed to be a lighthearted interview. What started as a celebration of legacy quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable exchanges in daytime television history, ending with Toni Braxton walking off the set in front of a stunned live audience. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on in this whole situation. The show opened like any other episode. Kelly Clarkson, known for her warm personality and genuine connection with guests, introduced Toni Braxton with nothing but praise. The audience erupted in applause as Toni walked out, smiling and waving. Kelly stood up to greet her, and the two embraced before settling into their seats. The energy seemed positive, even celebratory. Kelly started off by complimenting Toni's incredible career, mentioning her timeless hits and her influence on R&B music. Toni smiled graciously, thanking Kelly and the audience for the love. Kelly then transitioned into talking about Toni's recent projects, asking about her latest music and what inspired her return to the studio. Toni opened up about her creative process, describing how she pours her life experiences into every song. She talked about heartbreak, resilience, and finding her voice again after years of personal and professional struggles. Kelly listened intently, nodding along, and the conversation seemed to flow naturally. But then, Kelly brought up something that shifted the entire tone of the interview. "You know, Toni," Kelly said with a smile, "I have to ask because so many people have been talking about it. There's been a lot of discussion online about artists from your era and how the music industry has changed. Some people feel like the newer generation doesn't have the same level of talent or artistry. What's your take on that?" Toni paused for a moment, clearly considering her words carefully. "Well, I think every generation has its own sound and its own style," she began diplomatically. "Music evolves, and that's natural. But I do think there was something special about the way we approached music back in the day. We focused on vocal ability, on storytelling, on creating songs that had meaning and depth. It wasn't just about going viral or creating a moment. It was about creating art that would stand the test of time." Kelly nodded, but there was a slight shift in her expression. "Right? But don't you think that's a little unfair to say? I mean, there are so many incredibly talented artists today who work just as hard and pour just as much emotion into their music. The industry has changed, sure, but that doesn't mean the talent isn't there." Toni's smile tightened just a bit. "I didn't say the talent isn't there, Kelly. I'm just saying the priorities have shifted. Back when I was coming up, you had to prove yourself. You had to really sing. You couldn't rely on auto-tune or production tricks to carry you. If you couldn't deliver live, you didn't make it." The audience was silent now, sensing the tension building between the two women. Kelly leaned forward slightly, her tone still friendly, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "I get what you're saying, but I think that's kind of dismissive. I mean, I came up in a different era than you, and I had to prove myself too. I won a singing competition where I had to perform live every single week in front of millions of people. So I don't think it's fair to act like only your generation had to work hard or prove their talent." Toni's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not saying you didn't work hard, Kelly. I'm speaking in general terms about the state of the industry. But since you brought it up, I do think there's a difference between winning a competition and actually building a career from the ground up. Writing your own songs, producing your own sound, and creating a legacy that lasts decades." The air in the studio felt thick now. Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but her voice carried a sharpness that wasn't there before. "So what are you saying, Toni? That my career isn't legitimate because I got my start on a TV show? Because I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've written and co-written many of my songs, and I've sold millions of records. I've won Grammys. I've earned my place in this industry just like you have." Toni shifted in her seat, her body language becoming more defensive. "I'm not attacking you personally, Kelly, but let's be real. The music industry today rewards things that have nothing to do with actual talent. It's about how many followers you have, how many streams you can generate in the first week, how much buzz you can create on social media. That's not what music is supposed to be about." Kelly's voice rose slightly, her frustration becoming more apparent. "But that's the world we live in now, Toni. Artists have to adapt. They have to connect with their fans in different ways. That doesn't make them any less talented or any less deserving of respect. And honestly, it sounds like you're just bitter that the industry isn't the same as it was when you were at your peak." The audience gasped. Toni's face hardened immediately, and she sat up straighter in her chair. "Bitter," she repeated, her voice cold. "You think I'm bitter? I've had a career that most artists dream of. I've had #1 hits, I've won awards, I've sold out arenas around the world. I don't need to be bitter about anything. What I am is honest. And if honesty makes you uncomfortable, Kelly, maybe that says more about you than it does about me." Kelly's face flushed, and she opened her mouth to respond, but Toni wasn't finished. "You know what, Kelly? Toni continued, her voice steady but laced with intensity. I came on this show because I thought we were going to have a real conversation, but instead, you're trying to twist my words and make me out to be some kind of elitist who looks down on other artists. That's not what I said, and that's not who I am. I've always supported other women in this industry. I've always celebrated talent when I see it. But I'm also not going to pretend that everything is perfect and that the music industry hasn't lost something important along the way. Kelly took a breath, clearly trying to regain her composure. Toni, I'm not twisting your words. I'm responding to what you're actually saying. And what you're saying is that artists today don't measure up to your standards, that they're not as talented, that they don't work as hard. And I'm telling you that's not true. I've worked with so many incredible artists, young and old, and the talent is absolutely there. The dedication is there. The passion is there. Just because the industry has changed doesn't mean the heart of music has disappeared. Toni shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You're not hearing me. I never said talent doesn't exist today. What I said is that the industry doesn't value the same things anymore. It's not about being the best singer or the best songwriter. It's about being the most marketable, the most clickable, the most trendable. And if you can't see the difference, then maybe you're part of the problem. The audience murmured uncomfortably, and Kelly's jaw tightened. Part of the problem? She repeated, her voice rising again. Toni, I have spent my entire career championing other artists. I use my platform to lift people up, to give them opportunities, to celebrate their work. I've had legends on this show, and I've had newcomers. I treat everyone with respect, because I believe everyone deserves it. So for you to sit here and suggest that I'm part of some problem with the music industry is not only unfair, it's insulting. Toni leaned forward, her eyes locked on Kelly's. Then maybe you need to ask yourself why you're taking this so personally. I made a general statement about the industry, and you immediately made it about yourself. That tells me something. Maybe deep down, you know there's truth to what I'm saying. And it bothers you because you benefit from the system I'm criticizing. Kelly's face flushed a deeper shade of red, and her voice took on a sharper edge. I take it personally because you're sitting on my show, as my guest, and you're basically saying that my career and the careers of people I respect and admire are somehow less legitimate than yours. You're acting like your era was the golden age of music and everything since then has been a downgrade. That's not just insulting to me, it's insulting to every artist who has worked their tail off to make it in this industry. Toni crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. If the shoe fits, Kelly. The tension in the room was palpable now. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure of how to react. Kelly stared at Toni for a long moment, clearly weighing her next words. When she finally spoke, her voice was controlled but firm. You know what, Toni? I think you're incredibly talented. I think you've made amazing music, and I think you've earned your place as a legend in this industry. But I also think you're stuck in the past. I think you're so focused on how things used to be that you can't appreciate what's happening now. And that's sad because there's so much incredible music being made. So many incredible artists doing their thing, and you're missing it because you're too busy looking in the rearview mirror. Toni's face darkened, and she sat back in her chair, her arms still crossed. I'm not stuck in the past, Kelly. I'm just not willing to lower my standards to make people feel better about mediocrity. If that makes me difficult or old-fashioned or whatever label you want to put on me, then so be it. I'd rather be honest than be fake. Kelly let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. Honest? You think you're being honest. You're being judgmental. There's a difference. Honesty is saying, I prefer this style of music, or I think vocal ability is important. Judgment is saying, everyone who doesn't do things the way I did them is less than, and that's what you're doing right now. Toni uncrossed her arms and leaned forward again, her voice dropping lower but becoming more intense. You want to talk about judgment, Kelly? Let's talk about how you've built your entire brand on being relatable and down to earth. But the second someone challenges you or says something you don't like, you get defensive and try to shut them down. You asked me a question, I gave you an honest answer, and now you're upset because it's not the answer you wanted. That's not me being judgmental. That's you not being able to handle a difference of opinion. Kelly's eyes flashed with anger now, and she pointed a finger at Toni. Don't you dare try to flip this on me. I asked you a question, yes, but I didn't expect you to come on my show and disrespect an entire generation of artists, including me. You could have answered that question with grace and nuance, but instead, you chose to be condescending and dismissive. And now you're sitting here acting like I'm the problem because I called you out on it. Toni stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be lectured by you. I've been in this industry longer than you have, I've seen more than you have, and I've earned the right to have an opinion without being attacked for it. If you can't handle a real conversation, then maybe you should stick to singing covers and playing it safe. The audience gasped audibly, and Kelly stood up as well, her face a mixture of shock and fury. Excuse me, did you really just say that? To me, Toni grabbed her purse from beside her chair and slung it over her shoulder. I said what I said. and I'm done here. Kelly's voice rang out across the studio, loud and clear. Toni, sit down. We're not done talking about this. Toni turned back to face her, one eyebrow raised. Oh, we're absolutely done. I don't owe you anything, Kelly. Not an explanation, not an apology, nothing. You invited me here, and I told you the truth. If you can't handle that, that's your issue, not mine. Kelly stepped out from behind her chair, her hands gesturing emphatically. The truth? You call what you just said the truth. You insulted me, you insulted my career, and you insulted countless other artists who have worked just as hard as you have. That's not truth, Toni. That's arrogance. And honestly, I've lost a lot of respect for you in the last 10 minutes. Toni scoffed, shaking her head. Lost respect for me? Kelly, I never asked for your respect, and frankly, I don't need it. What I need is for people to stop pretending that everything in the music industry is sunshine and rainbows when we all know it's not. Someone has to be willing to say what everyone else is thinking, and if that makes me the villain in your story, then fine, I'll be the villain. Kelly crossed her arms now, mirroring Toni's earlier posture. You're not a villain, Toni, you're just wrong, and you're too proud to admit it. You came on this show with a chip on your shoulder, and instead of having a meaningful conversation, you decided to tear down other people to make yourself feel superior. That's not strength, that's insecurity. Toni's eyes widened, and she took a step closer to Kelly. Insecurity? You think I'm insecure? I've been at the top of this game for decades. I've survived industry politics, personal struggles, financial hardships, and I'm still here. I'm still relevant. I'm still making music that matters. So don't you stand there and try to psychoanalyze me like you know anything about what I've been through. Kelly didn't back down, taking a step forward as well. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you, Toni. I'm responding to what you're showing me right now. And what you're showing me is someone who feels threatened by the new generation. Someone who can't celebrate other people's success without diminishing it. Someone who has to tear others down to feel important. And that's really sad to see, from someone I used to admire. The audience was completely silent now, all eyes glued to the two women standing in the center of the stage. The camera operators continued filming, capturing every moment of the escalating confrontation. Toni's hands clenched into fists at her sides, and her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You used to admire me. Past tense. That's interesting, Kelly, because I never admired you. I respected your success. Sure, I acknowledged your talent. But admire? No, because admiration requires depth, and everything about you is surface level. You play it safe. You say what people want to hear. You never take a real stand on anything because you're too worried about being liked by everyone. Kelly's mouth fell open slightly, and for a moment she seemed genuinely hurt. But then her expression hardened again, and she fired back. I play it safe. I say what people want to hear. Toni, I have used my platform to speak out on issues that matter. I've shared my struggles with mental health, with divorce, with being a working mother. I've been vulnerable and real with my audience in ways that actually connect with people. Just because I don't go around insulting everyone and acting superior doesn't mean I'm not authentic. It means I have emotional intelligence, something you clearly lack. Toni laughed, but there was no humor in it. Emotional intelligence, is that what we're calling it now? Kelly, you share your struggles because it's good for your brand. It makes you relatable, it makes you likable, it keeps your ratings up. But when someone comes on your show and gives you a real, unfiltered opinion, you can't handle it. You fall apart, you get defensive, you attack. So don't talk to me about emotional intelligence when you can't even have a difficult conversation without melting down. Kelly's voice rose to a near shout. I'm not melting down. I'm standing up for myself and for the artists you're disrespecting. Someone has to, because clearly no one in your life has ever told you that you can't just say whatever you want without consequences. Your opinion isn't more valuable than anyone else's just because you had a few hit songs in the 90s. Toni's face contorted with rage. A few hit songs, a few hit songs. I have 7 Grammy Awards. Kelly, I've sold over 67 million records worldwide. I've had #1 albums, platinum certifications, and a career that has influenced countless artists. So don't you dare reduce my legacy to a few hit songs like I'm some one-hit wonder. You, of all people, should understand what it takes to build a lasting career. But apparently you're too caught up in your own ego to recognize greatness when it's standing right in front of you. Kelly threw her hands up in exasperation. There it is. There's the real Toni Braxton. You can't help yourself, can you? You have to remind everyone of your accomplishments. You have to make sure everyone knows how great you are, how much better you are than everyone else. Newsflash, Toni, your resume doesn't give you the right to belittle other people. It doesn't give you the right to act like you're above criticism. And it definitely doesn't give you the right to come on my show and disrespect me in front of my audience. Toni adjusted her purse on her shoulder and turned toward the exit. I already told you, I'm done here. You can keep your show, your fake positivity, and your desperate need for everyone to like you. I don't need any of it. Kelly's voice followed her as she started walking. That's right, Toni, walk away. Run away from the conversation because you can't handle being challenged. That's real mature. That's real professional. Toni stopped in her tracks and spun around one more time. You want to talk about professionalism? Kelly, a professional host would know how to navigate a difficult conversation without making it personal. A professional host would be able to disagree with their guest without attacking them. But you couldn't do that, could you? Because underneath all that bubbly, friendly personality, you're just as insecure as everyone else. The difference is, I own who I am. You hide behind a mask. Kelly's voice cracked slightly, emotion breaking through her anger. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm being myself, and part of being myself is not tolerating disrespect. Not from you, not from anyone. Toni stared at Kelly for a long moment, her chest rising and falling with each breath. You know what the saddest part about all of this is? I actually thought you were different. I thought you were someone who could handle real talk, who could have a conversation that went beyond surface-level pleasantries. But you're just like everyone else in this industry. You want everyone to smile and nod and tell you how amazing you are. Well, I'm not that person. I never have been, and I never will be. Kelly wiped at her eyes quickly, but her voice remained strong. Real talk. Toni, there's a difference between real talk and just being mean. You can be honest without being cruel. You can disagree without being disrespectful. But you chose to come here and be condescending from the moment I asked you a simple question about the industry. You chose to make this confrontational. You chose to attack me personally when all I did was push back on your generalizations. Toni's expression softened for just a fraction of a second, but then hardened again. I didn't attack you, Kelly. I responded to what you said to me. You called me bitter. You said I was stuck in the past. You said I was judgmental and arrogant. And now you're acting like I'm the one who started this. You can't have it both ways. You can't come for someone and then act shocked when they come back at you. Kelly shook her head slowly. I called you out on what you were saying because what you were saying was problematic. And yes, maybe I got heated. Maybe I said some things that were harsh. But you pushed me there. Toni, you kept doubling down, kept insulting, kept dismissing. What was I supposed to do? Just sit there and smile while you trashed my career and everyone else's? Toni looked around the studio, at the cameras still rolling, at the audience sitting in stunned silence, at the crew members frozen in place. This is exactly what's wrong with the world today. Nobody can handle honesty anymore. Nobody can have a real disagreement without it turning into a spectacle. I came here to talk about music, to talk about my career, to have what I thought would be a genuine conversation. But instead, it turned into this circus because you couldn't handle my perspective. Kelly's voice was quieter now, but no less intense. Toni, you're right about one thing. This did turn into a circus. But it's not because I couldn't handle your perspective. It's because your perspective was delivered with contempt. You didn't share an opinion, you delivered a judgment. And when I challenged that judgment, you got defensive and turned it into a personal attack. If you can't see that, if you honestly believe you did nothing wrong here, then I feel sorry for you. Toni's jaw clenched. Don't feel sorry for me, Kelly. Feel sorry for yourself. Because years from now, when people look back at your career, they're going to remember that you were a great singer, sure, but they're also going to remember that you couldn't handle a difficult conversation. They're going to remember that when someone challenged you, you fell apart. And that's going to be your legacy. Kelly stepped closer, her eyes locked on Toni's. My legacy will be that I stood up for what I believe in, that I defended myself and others when someone tried to tear us down, that I didn't let someone walk all over me just because they had a bigger career or more awards. And I'm proud of that. I would rather be remembered as someone who fought back than someone who stayed silent. Toni shouldered her purse more firmly and took a deep breath. Well then, I guess we both got what we wanted out of this conversation. You got to play the victim and rally your audience around you, and I got to speak my truth without sugarcoating it. So congratulations, Kelly, you won. You got your moment. Kelly's voice was barely above a whisper now, but it cut through the silence like a knife. This isn't about winning or losing, Toni. This is about respect. And you lost mine the moment you decided that your opinion was more important than treating people with basic decency. Toni didn't respond. She simply turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the floor with each step. The audience remained silent, unsure whether to react or not. Kelly stood in the center of the stage, watching Toni leave, her arms crossed and her expression a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. As Toni reached the edge of the stage, she paused one final time without turning around. For what it's worth, Kelly, Toni said, her voice carrying across the studio. I hope you figure out the difference between being liked and being respected, because right now, you have one but not the other. With that, Toni Braxton walked off the set, disappearing through the exit as the doors closed behind her. Kelly stood there for a moment longer, processing what had just happened. Then she turned to face the audience, her composure slowly returning. She took a breath and addressed the crowd directly. Well, Kelly said, her voice wavering slightly but growing stronger. I think we all just witnessed something pretty intense. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend like that didn't affect me, because it did. But I meant every word I said. I will always stand up for myself. and I will always stand up for the artists who work their hearts out in this industry, no matter what era they're from, because that's what matters. Not ego, not legacy competition, but lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down." The audience erupted into applause, and Kelly smiled, though her eyes were still glassy with unshed tears. She thanked the audience, thanked her crew, and signaled for a commercial break as she walked off stage herself, leaving everyone to process what they had just witnessed. The clash between Toni Braxton and Kelly Clarkson was raw, unfiltered, and completely unexpected. Two powerhouse voices collided in a battle of perspectives, egos, and emotions that nobody will forget anytime soon. So what do you think? Was Toni right to speak her truth, even if it came across as harsh? Or did she cross the line? Was Kelly justified in defending herself and other artists? Or did she take it too personally? Make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below, answering this question: who do you think was right in this situation, Toni or Kelly?